noise!
Hello and welcome to another edition of Truth and Rhythm. Brought to you by funkinstuff.net, this is the interview show that gets deep in the pocket with contemporary music's foremost masters of the groove. I am your host, Scott Dr. GX Goldfine, musicologist, creative arts journalist, and multimedia pro. Whether you're watching the video version of this show or the audio-only podcast version, I thank you so much for your continued interest and support in this show. If you enjoy this programming, there are several ways to help support Truth and Rhythm, as well as contribute to further enhancements and expansion, plus get some sweet perks and rewards in the process. First, subscribe to the Funkin' Stuff channel on YouTube, which is where Truth and Rhythm lives, and be an advocate by spreading the word among fellow funk, jazz, and R&B music lovers. Second, join Truth and Rhythm's new membership program through Patreon, which features 3 tiers for truth believers, truth seekers, and truth crusaders. You can also submit a direct donation to the cause anytime at funkinstuff.net. At that site, which is loaded with awesome content, you can also purchase the book Everything's on the One, The First Guide of Funk. Shop for official Truth and Rhythm and Funkin' Stuff merchandise, and use the Amazon links for all of your online purchases, which allocates a percentage to this show. Sponsorship opportunities are available as well. Contact me directly at scottg@funkinstuff.net. For those of you who go the extra step in supporting the show, you have my heartfelt gratitude for allowing us to continue to shine the light on those special artists whose quest is to find truth in rhythm. I am pleased to welcome to the Truth and Rhythm Mothership keyboardist, singer, composer, and producer Preston Glass. Starting out as a staff writer for Philly soul legend Tom Bell, by the early 1980s, he was working with some of the biggest names in R&B and continued to do so well into the 21st century. Those artists include his mentor, Narada Walden, Aretha Franklin, Phyllis, Hyman, Whitney Houston, Stacy, Latisaw, Teena Marie, Larry Graham, Sheena, Easton, Benny King, Kenny G, George Benson, Earth, Wind and Fire, especially Maurice White, Lionel, Richie, Jermaine, Stewart, the Dells, Stylistics, Delfonics, Lenny Williams, Freda, Payne, Natalie, Johnny Mathis, Starpoint, Evelyn, Champagne King, and many others. In all, he's been associated with more than 30 top 10 R&B hits and 5 top 10 pop hits. Since 2006, Glass, whose brother Alan is also an accomplished musician, has released a half dozen albums under his own name. Wow, Preston, that's impressive. Thank you for joining the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Boy, that list makes me feel tired and old.
Well, looking behind you, it looks like you have, souvenirs from a lot of that work. So,
yeah, well, I rarely look behind me, and I guess that's why I'm still doing it today.
Well, thank you for being on the show. Much appreciated. Where are you coming to us from today?
In the sunny Los Angeles. I know the rest of the country is kind of suffering here, but we're in the cold 60 degrees here.
Yeah, I know how that is. I born and raised there, moved to the East Coast in 2006, so I miss that weather sometimes, believe me.
I'll take a picture of the sun for you.
It kind of looks a little bit like the sun over your head, so I'll pretend that's the Southern California sun right there.
For that. All right.
And they say when you're cool, the sun's always shining, so there you go.
Very good.
Now, where are you from originally, Preston?
I never know how to really answer that. My parents are both from the South, New Orleans, and my dad from Savannah, Georgia. But he being a military man, they lived all over, so I kind of grew up all over. we kind of settled in California, different spots. But my youth was spent all over the country, and as a result, I was exposed to all different kind of radio stations and cultures, and I think that's the reason why my musical taste is so diverse.
And what first drew you to music, and how and when did you decide that you were going to pursue that for your life?
Well, I started playing guitar when I was 5, and started, unbeknownst to me, started composing songs. And one of my older brothers, actually Alan, he said, "Man, what are you doing? I've never heard this song before. You know, you're writing songs." I said, "Really?" So I would get different records back in the day, 45s, you know. And my dad would buy them, and I would look on the label, and I would see the artist name, but then I would see, actually I inquired, who's that in parentheses? Because I would see a lot of the same names. Like if I bought a lot of Motown, I would see Holland, Dozier, Holland, or Smokey Robinson. And my dad would say, "Well, that's the songwriter, the person that wrote the song." And then I became instantly enthralled with, wow, I think I want to be a songwriter, because they're on all these records. And then, of course, as I grew older, I started to understand just what that was, songwriting and composing and lyric writing. And I started writing songs, a song a day for about 5 years.
Wow.
And then, as I became a teenager, I started sending my music out. And that's when I caught the attention of Tom Bell. And
So you sent it to his attention, or it got passed along to him, or?
well, I sent it to Philly International Records, which the A&R guy at the time was Phil Terry, who was one of the Intruders, believe it or not. And he let me know that Tom Bell was doing a workshop in Philadelphia one particular weekend when I was 16. He said, "If there's a way you can get out here, I'll introduce you to Tom." And of course, I was in California, Philadelphia being 3,000 miles away. Not being, you know, well off. We're just average middle class family. So I did a high school performance where my choir director announced that the proceeds from the performance half would go to the music department, the other half would go to my trip to Philadelphia. So we raised money for me to fly out there. I met Tom, and from that, I was a fan of Tom, by the way, so I knew exactly who he was. Loved all, you know, I would see his records, his name on the records. I always thought it was Thom Bell.
What year was it when you went out there, Preston?
76. 1976. Actually, no, I'm sorry, 77. And he had just finished doing some work with Elton John, and he had did it in Seattle. So I didn't know anything about this Seattle connection where Tom moved from Philly to the West Coast. So all the time I was out there, I was trying to convince him, you know, I think I'm going to move to Philly, and I'd like to just, you know, have you mentor me. And he said, "Man, you got to finish high school. You got to finish high school." I said, "Oh, I'm going to finish high school. I'll just finish it out here in Philly." And then he whispered in my ear, he said, "Man, I'm not supposed to really tell anybody this, but I'm moving out to your side of the country." He said, "So stay where you are." I said, "Oh." Now, when he said your side, I thought L.A. I thought he'd be coming out this way, but he moved out to Seattle, and that's when he set up shop there. And as soon as I finished high school, I looked him up, and to his promise, he did mentor me. He signed me and my brother Alan to a staff writer position there at Bellboy Music, which is part of the Mighty 3 publishing company.
And what was like the first project that you were, you know, associated with there?
Yeah, staff writers, we were assigned whatever project Tom was working on at the time. We were apprised of it, and then we went to work, we all had our writing rooms, and some of the different writers that were there at the time was Bell and James, Leroy Bell and Casey James, and then there was George and Shannon, who have now written #1 hits with George Merrill and Shannon Rupcam. There was a bunch of talented writers. So the first project was Dee Dee Bridgewater, and we had a song on that album. And then the next project Tom did was Denise Williams. We were able to write one with Denise herself and Tom. And right after that was the Temptations, and we had 2 songs on that album. So seemed like we were striking right there on the target. Every project Tom was doing, we at least had a song. So that was a good learning experience for us, kind of watching how he would take songs and arrange them. We would go in the studio and just watch. It was great.
Wow, what an education. And you were doing music and lyrics, or just one or the other, or which?
Depending on the song, I learned early on how to do both. So, for instance, on the Denise Williams song, it was all music for me. Me and Tom did the music, and Denise and Alan did the lyrics. On the Temptation stuff, it was a little of both. I wrote a lot of the lyrics on that. So,
what was it like growing up with Alan? Which one is older, and sort of who's better at what?
All right. Well, Alan is older than me. He's 7 years older than me, but I don't know why. A lot of people always would think that he was my younger brother. I think because maybe our personalities, I'm more laid back, and he was more the outgoing party guy. And Alan's one of his unique talents that I don't really possess is he's a phenomenal guitar player. I play a little guitar, but I wouldn't call myself a guitar player. So he does that, but he has a lot of the skill set that I have as far as production, and he does a lot of that over in Europe. He's been in Europe for 30 years. So, yeah. And we still write together. We got a song that we just wrote that is going to be on the brand new Spinners album that I just produced. That's coming out in June.
Wow, exciting. Very cool.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first song that you were associated with that you maybe heard on the radio or something like that?
Yeah, it was, I'll never forget it, actually. It was Stacy, Latisaw, and Johnny Gill, Perfect Combination. And I would hear that quite regularly on a R&B station in the Bay Area. That was when we lived up in the Bay working with Narada Walden. And first time I heard it, I was like, it was like an out-of-body experience, Like, wow, I like that song. Who wrote that? That kind of thing.
How did you connect with Narada Walden, and was there anything sort of between Tom Bell and him, or was it directly to that?
Well, there was really no lull space between Tom and Narada. By the way, his name is pronounced Narada Walden. A lot of people think it's Narada, but it's Narada.
Narada.
And yes, like Florida, Narada. But what happened was I was at Tom's, and I would say that between myself and my brother Alan, we would write like 10 songs a week. We had our own writing room. We were so excited, and of course Tom, he had a workload, but he wasn't doing a whole lot of projects. So song here, song there. We're talking about maybe 3 songs a year. So there were dozens of songs just sitting there that we thought some of them were pretty good. So I said to myself, you know what? Even though I'm signed to Bellboy Music, I want to send some of our songs out to some other of our favorite producers. So I remember sending this one particular batch of songs to Quincy Jones. I sent one to Narada Walden, and I got immediate response from Narada saying he was a big fan of Tom Bell, and I guess he saw the return sticker on there saying Bellboy Music, so he opened it right away. And there was a song on there called Spotlight that he gravitated to, and he ended up doing that song for the second Stacy Latisaw album. So based on him liking that song, he put the word out. He said, man, if you got any more songs or if you're interested in collaborating, let me know. And just so happened that about a year or so later, Tom was really slowing down, kind of on purpose, for a personal reason. So because he wasn't doing as many projects, we didn't really have much to write for. So I went down to San Francisco, and next thing you know, I moved down there. And Narada loved collaborating with me and kind of wanted me around. I guess he liked my energy or something. So next thing you know, I became kind of like an A&R guy for his production company. And I would do, besides writing songs with him and for projects he had, much like the Tom Bell situation, I would also keep track of songs that he wrote that he might have forgot about. And one of those songs was a song that he and Jeffrey Cohen wrote called Freeway of Love. He had wrote that for himself. And when he didn't put it on his album, he just put it on the shelf. But I always thought it was a cool little song, reminded me of a Motown kind of thing. So when it came time to do Aretha, I reminded him, I said, remember that song Freeway of Love? He barely remembered it, but he said, yeah, I think so. I said, man, listen to it. I think that'd be a great song for Aretha Franklin. At first he was like, I don't know about that. I said, just let the rhythm guy, your rhythm musicians practice the song and see what you think. And then once they played on it, he loved it. And the kicker was, of course, Clive Davis heard the demo and he went bananas.
Wow. So when you sent these songs to Narada, were they just written out, or were there demos, or what form were they in?
You mean the original stuff I sent to him?
Yeah.
They were demos. They were like records, really. I guess because I'd always studied arrangement, and I have Tom Bell to thank for helping to hone my arrangement skills and stuff, because I would watch him closely. So when I came time to demoing my songs and my brother's songs, we would always want to put that overdub and that overdub, and us not being really singers, we would always get, if it was a male artist, we would get the local great male vocalist. Or Alan's girlfriend was a girl named Barbara Wood, and she would sing all the female demos, and that's, she had a great voice, so that's how we got those Dee Dee Bridgewater cuts with Tom and Denise Williams cuts. See, I sent those demos to Narada Walden, so they were already almost record like in their makeup. In fact, a lot of the little overdubs he ended up doing on there. So I guess cut to years later, that's how I was able to get some production gigs, because as I started having a lot of cuts with Narada and he started getting offers to do certain projects, he would throw them my way if he didn't want to do them or if he didn't have the time. And that's how the Kenny G album happened.
So when you went to transition to Narada and that part of your career, did you and Alan kind of go your own ways at that point, or?
Yeah, Alan was pursuing more of the performing end. Like I said, he's a great guitar player. He had a couple of bands, and he still would write, but it wasn't until I guess I was having a measure of success with the songs for Narada that and my publishing was getting ready to be available again. I was still signed to Tom Bell the whole time I was working with Narada. So I was getting a lot of offers from Almo Irving and MCA Music and different companies, Famous Music. And so Alan said, man, I want to join you in writing. Let's start our own company. So that's what we did when our publishing contract was up with Tom Bell. We were offered to have our own company under one of those other majors. So Alan and I started Glass House Music, and we signed with Almo Irving, which was Lance Freed and Brenda Andrews and them. And that was a good relationship.
So Narada seems like, such a friendly, kind of easygoing guy. How would you describe, what was the first impression you got from him? And then how did you come to, become, I assume, friends? And how can you describe him both as a person and as a talent?
Oh, there's a lot of questions in there. Let me take the first part. You said he sounds like a friendly, easygoing person. Yes, he's friendly. Easygoing, I don't know. He's very, I know you don't know me very well, but I'm kind of laid back and easy, and he's very intense, very spontaneous, very. Sometimes he's jumping off the wall. So I think that's one of the reasons why we work together well, because I'm like the yin and he's the yang, and our relationship, yeah, we became friends. We're still friends over 40 years, but yeah, he of course being a phenomenal drummer, I think the energy comes from that, his energy, and we're still working on tunes together. There's a song, I don't know if he wants me to say this, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it. You're the first to know about it. But the Temptations, this year is their 60th year in the business, recording and everything. So they're going to make a big splash about that. And I think during Black Music Month in June, they're going to come out with a song that Narada and I wrote along with Otis Williams called When We Were Kings. And it's going to feature a lyric that really talks about their life as the Temptations, all the members, maybe not all the members, but the principal initial members, along with Dennis Edwards as well. And
Wow.
They're mentioned in the lyric, yeah. So it's a special song, and I was commissioned riding along with Narada by Otis to write this.
Nice. We'll definitely keep an ear out for that. What would you say, though, is his talent as a producer?
Oh, he's got a lot of great talents. One of the things that you really I've come to find out is very important. It's not even related to music. It's related to how he deals with the individual. For instance, if he's producing Whitney Houston, or he's very keen at getting them to be comfortable, getting them to get the right performance. He's a genius at that, and of course, there are so many great musicians in this industry. There are a lot of great producers, but there's not a lot of people that know how to make an artist feel comfortable, and that's one of his talents.
So going back to the Freeway of Love, when that took off and Aretha came out with that record, and it completely restarted her career and brought her to a whole new audience, and those viewers who maybe weren't around at the time when that came out in the mid '80s, it was quite a sensation. The videos, everything, it was a whole phenomenon with Aretha back in the limelight. How did that change your life? And did you get to spend much time or any time with Aretha?
Very interesting. Well, the first part of your question, how did it change my life? Well, it changed it completely, because it really made me have a legitimate career in songwriting and musicianship and all of that. And as far as meeting her, well, there were 6 songs that she did of mine. One that she co-wrote, which was Who's Zooming Who, and I had never met her because what happened was Narada would do her vocals in Detroit because she didn't fly at that time. She didn't fly. So the tracks were done where we were, and Aretha would do them in Detroit. Now I had been introduced to her on the phone and talked to her on the phone, but never met her until the year 2008. And I'll never forget, I was introduced to her, and the person that introduced me, it was at an award show, said, Aretha, you might not know this gentleman by face, but you probably know him by name. This is Preston Glass. And before the guy could say any more, she said, I know that name. That name is sitting right next to me on Who's Zooming Who. I always wondered who's that guy. That's what she said. She was cool though.
Wow. It's like more than 20 years after the record.
Right.
Yeah.
She's something else. She was a personality that was on fire because one of the times I had met her on the phone was when Clive Davis asked Narada to produce Aretha. So Narada had already had a few conversations with her, and this particular time he said, I'm going to call her because after talking to her a few times, I see she's got such a colorful speech and colorful personality. I want to write down some of the stuff she says, but I don't want to have to be burdened with that. Can you write it down for me? I'll put it on speakerphone. I'll introduce you, and then that's how we got introduced. And I was supposed to be the phone transcriber, and everything she said was a song title or something. You know, the conversation was like, hey Aretha, so how you doing? How's Ree? She said, well, I'm not in the best frame of mind. I just got rid of my Ferrari fella. I wrote down Ferrari fella, and she said, yeah, I kicked him to the curb. And I wrote down kicked to the curb, and so I'm free now. And Narada said, so you're free, your love life is open. What are you going to do? And she said, well, I might go out to a club, but I did last night, you know, and I kind of forget who I am. I forget I'm Ree, you know, that's her nickname. And she said, I was there, and I was checking out this guy. She said, I was scoping this guy, and I wrote down scoping. That's a good song title. And she said, he was scoping me. It was like, who's zooming who, you know? And I wrote that down. Little did I know that would become the title of her next album. And we gave her co-writer's credit for coming up with that title because I had never thought of who's zooming who. And I remember when we sent her the demo, because we you know, finished the song, we recorded the tracks, we got a demo vocalist, and she said, I like that song. That's very creative. And we said, yeah, you co-wrote that. She said, I did? She didn't even remember saying that, you know.
Wow. So she just had her own language almost.
Exactly. Well, you can kind of hear it on Freeway of Love in that middle where she says, let's drop the top, baby, and drive on into It's Better Than Ever Street, you know. Come on, who thinks of that?
Yeah, what a personality. I mean, it's just one of the greatest talents of all time, of course, but also the personality.
Yeah, and it's something I learned from Narada to get that personality captured on the recording, because of course she's a great singer, but what makes her different than every other artist out there is her unique personality.
So, you know, I read a long list of people that you've worked with over the years, and a lot of them happened, you know, in that time frame of the 80s. You must have never slept during the 80s, right? Once that became a hit, you're just nonstop doing stuff, right?
Yeah, it was, well, I'm just now starting to look back, and yeah, that's kind of the way I feel. It's like, wow, when did I sleep? Literally, when we had just finished doing Whitney's second album, I was playing playing and arranging on the tracks. I Want to Dance with Somebody and all that. And at the same time, Clive Davis offered Narada to produce Kenny G. At that time, Narada said, I don't, I'm not really interested. And I, being from Seattle, not from Seattle, but had lived there with Tom Bell's organization, I was familiar with Kenny playing around town and him being a great sax player under Jeff Lorber. And so I inquired with Narada. I said, well, if you don't want to do it, I'll do it. And I was trying to break into production, thus far, I did produce half of the Stacy, Latisaw, Johnny Gill album. I co-produced that with Narada. So I wanted to get out there a little more and do some production. So Clive and them went for it. They went for the idea that I could produce it under Narada's executive production. So the only way we could get that done in a timely fashion is I would either have to do it at a different studio and come back and work with Narada on the Whitney, or we could do it all at Narada's, but it'd have to be pretty much around the clock. So Narada would do Whitney's album from 11 a.m. to about 11 at night, and then I would do Kenny G's Dual Tones album from midnight to 8 in the morning or something like that. And that's, well, that's how hungry I was. No sleep, but a lot of music.
Yeah, wow. So Kenny G was was you consider that your first major production project that was really on your shoulders?
Yeah, that was actually my first production project, period. The other project was a co-production with Narada, but this is the first album I ever produced by myself.
So when that was successful, what did that do for you?
Well, if you have time, I can tell you that when that album came out and the first single came out and the second single came out, it was not successful. Both of those singles came out and sort of flopped, as one might say. The third single was Songbird. And to Kenny's credit, he asked Arista's promotion department, can you please put this out, and I will pay for the video myself as well as the promotional dollars myself, because I think they were already talking about dropping him from the label. So, of course, we know what happened with Songbird. Boom. It exploded. And then they re-released the first two singles, both top 10. And then, of course, that's when the album started selling, in the millions. And well, that it did change a lot of things. I don't want to get too detailed, but I got a lot of offers to produce people after that, mainly sax players, but a lot of people, including some other Arista artists like Jermaine Jackson, who I produced. But I was willing and wanting to, or thinking it was all going to happen under Narada's production banner because I was part of the team. But I think Narada didn't want me to have designs on producing. He thought of me as a A&R guy, writer, arranger, kind of organizer. And as far as production, no, you're getting a little bit too out of it. You're getting too much. You're doing too much, man. So I pretty much got fired, and that's when I started Glass House Productions with my brother Alan, and we did Earth, Wind, and Fire and a few other things. And we're really about half a mile from Narada. We got our own office, our own studio, but that went on for a few years, and then me and Narada got back together. But yeah, that was a little rough patch there.
A little contentious because you were getting onto his turf a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was one of the best things that ever happened because I really, I wanted to produce. Well, this was it. I was not only producing, but I had to do it under my own production company, so a lot of other responsibilities happened. But I think that helped have the freedom of what I wanted to do, who I wanted to do it with, and all that.
Yeah. Well, it's a proverbial third time was a charm with those singles for Kenny G.
Yeah, isn't that something? I mean, when I think back, I mean, Kenny used to, he was so broke. He used to, do you have any money for some reeds? I need some new reeds for myself. And it was nothing, to us. It was like, well, he's a struggling, sax player. Sure, man, whatever. And then next thing you know, boom.
Yeah, from my vantage point, it was really interesting to see that trajectory because I was a fan of the Jeff Lorber Fusion in the 70s, and then I was like, wait, that's Kenny Gorelick. That's the same guy that was,
Yeah.
wow. Um,
Yeah, that as far as from what I hear, the relationship with Kenny and Jeff kind of went interesting too because of that as well.
I had, I don't know if you know Joe Plass, but he was on the
Yes,
show, and yeah,
oh,
he was playing with a lot of Kenny G at that time.
we played on the album that I produced. Yeah,
Yeah.
on one song we did completely live, and Joe was on there.
So let me ask you about a couple of these other folks you worked with right around that time, a little bit before Kenny G, but you did some work with Teena Marie. Is that right?
Yeah, I actually played guitar on I guess it's one of her greatest hits, "Out on a Limb," which she wrote. And even though she gets the credit on the label for producing, Narada pretty much produced that track. And then if you look on the label, you'll see all of Narada's musicians on that song. But that's how I got to work with her, and she was real cool. She's real down to earth. And she sang like she was on, when she was singing on the mic, she sang like she was on stage. She was twirling, and it was interesting.
Yeah, a tremendous talent she was. I think underrated by a lot of people because one of my favorite singers, but plus she was just all around musical. Great loss.
Yeah.
And then you had some stuff that you've done with Larry Graham.
Yes. Larry is, a lot of people don't know, Larry is my brother-in-law. Narada was asked by Warner Brothers to produce some songs for an album by Lenny, and that was in 1985. So Larry's wife, Teena, her sister, Sheena, came to the studio. We got married 2 weeks later. So, and now we've been married for 36 years or so. 37, we're going on 37. But yeah, there's my brother-in-law, and that album's fired up. That Narada did some cuts on, and since then, he's close to the family now. We've done a lot of collaborating. He's got an album that's on my little label now that we put out a year and a half ago called Chillin'. And it's a lot of songs that showcase his vocal chops.
So, what have you had the good fortune of getting to see Larry fool around with his bass up close at all, anytime?
Well, yes, and as I mentioned, well, of course, we've been to a lot of his gigs and had him play on quite a few sessions. I mentioned earlier about this song by the Temptations. Well, Larry's playing bass on it. We got Larry to play bass on it, so it's going to be a legendary kind of song there.
Wow. He must be, he'll be up to 60 years pretty soon in the business, Larry.
Yeah, it's very interesting, how music changes, and we had to do his bass through virtual, through Zoom and all that. And he's learning how to do all that, even though he's, old school and everything. He knows how to hook it up to the engineer out here in California, and he did it. He lives in Minneapolis, right there with Prince. He's still, even though Prince was like a little brother to him, even though he passed away, Larry's daughter and grandkids still live in Minnesota, so he can't go nowhere. He's still in that cold weather.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever get to meet Prince, but through him?
Yes. Very. Speaking of down there, really down there guy. Kind of quiet, but not. I think when he was younger, which I didn't know him then. He did a lot of his aloof personality kind of things by design. Then, as he got older, I think he just mellowed out and became mature and just a regular guy, But a regular guy. Let me say that a little differently. A regular guy when it comes to his personality, but his genius was well taken, well noted. I remember my father-in-law, who they got to be good friends because Larry's wife, my wife's mother and father, and Larry's wife, Teena, who is Gina's sister, their mother and father became like a mother and father to Prince. And so my father-in-law would always play pool with him, and he would always lose, because Prince would just run the table. But that was a thing between them. Okay, this time I'm going to win, and he'd never win. He was good at everything: basketball, pool, of course, musicianship. But yeah, interesting guy.
That's what I hear. Just competitive, no matter what it was. Yeah. I remember I saw Larry Graham play at the House of Blues in like 1995, maybe.
Right. I think I got was to. There.
Oh yeah, that was an awesome show. I was so glad to see them back again. But I went backstage, and Larry and Teena were so nice. And I told him at the time, I said, have you met Prince? And he said, no. And so, because, he's like doing covers of like so many of your songs. He's like, Don't I Believe in You? And just all these tracks. And I'm like, you should like meet him and hook up. Yeah, and then a year later, they became like, best friends forever.
Yeah, I don't think Larry really was, I won't say he wasn't familiar with him, but I don't think he really knew much about Prince's music, because I had the same experience. We would, me and my brother-in-law, we would get together and just listen to, hey, what's the latest album you got? What do you got? What do you got? And I remember playing them the Emancipation album. And I said, this guy's all over you, man, the bass licks and all that. And Larry said, I have to check him out. Almost like Prince is some new artist. And then of course, he became, part of his tour, and they became like brothers. And who would have known,
Yeah. I was glad they finally connected, because they certainly were, musically and spiritually connected before that even, I think.
Yeah.
So what was your exposure to Whitney Houston like, and what was she like?
She, what's interesting, there's the persona that everybody had and has, and then there's the Whitney that was around the studio and singing and whatever. Of course, let's talk about musically, just phenomenal, and she knew she was phenomenal. She was humble, but she loved her voice. She'd be like, "Man, I sound good. No, I listen to that." But then that's how she talked too. Maybe the image of Miss pristine, church-going, never do wrong lady was what the media saw. But I always call her, she was an around-the-way girl. In other words, she was just a woman down the street, or a woman from the hood, really, because she's from the hood originally. And that's how she really was in the studio. She laughed a lot. She played jokes and all that kind of stuff.
What about George Benson?
Yeah, he's definitely a genius and a perfectionist. By the way, George is one of our dear friends too. Um, yeah, he's a perfectionist with his guitar and with his voice and with his musicianship, whatever his arrangements on his songs. You know, uh, a producer that doesn't have a backbone would have a hard time working with him because he would just chew them up, spit them out. But I kind of found out his weakness, and because basically a lot of these guys, musicians, are uh, they're perfectionists, but sometimes there's a reason why they're not producers, or there's a reason why they're not. Their role is what they do. They're a guitar player. They're a singer, and I think if he were to be a producer, it would be to his default that he is a perfectionist. So I started to realize that because I started to realize some of the technical things he was picking on in the studio really didn't matter. So once I started to figure that out, of course you can't tell him that. Part of producer's job is being a psychologist. So we figured out, well, take him to dinner, take a break. If he's really harping on, oh, this mix isn't right, there's something not right, I don't like it. Of course, the mix is sounding fantastic. So I would tell my engineer, okay, don't touch nothing, but please make it look like you did something. And we're going to go to dinner, and we'll come back and see what George thinks of that. So George, we made sure he had a couple of bottles of Chardonnay at dinner. And we come back, and I had asked the engineer, okay, play what you got. And George heard it and said, that's phenomenal. We love that. What'd you put on there? And Maureen, we had a female engineer at the time, Maureen Troney. And she just said, oh, I put some spaghetti sauce and, and George was happy. So and we did that every day on every mix. Take a dinner break, a couple bottles of wine, come back. He loved it after that.
And While the City Sleeps, was that the first time you worked with him?
Yes. And I really enjoyed seeing him and Narada go back and forth with their musicianship. Narada being a great drummer, George being a consummate guitar player. And they both are very, when they record or when they work in the studio, they're teachers, So George was teaching and Narada was teaching, and I was just soaking it all in.
Well, I had the good fortune to be at the Weekend in LA show at the Roxy back in the 70s, and that was a thrill. I've always wanted to meet George, and I've been trying to get him on the show, but not yet. But I hope before it's all said and done that happens somehow. There's much more to this great Truth and Rhythm interview. Just continue on to the next part of the episode. Also, be sure to subscribe to this channel. If you've already done so, please share it with friends. And become a member by joining Truth and Rhythm on Patreon, or consider donating at funkinstuff.net. Thank you very much.